All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're going to unpack a really fundamental idea in economics. Why is it that some industries are this total free-for-all, while others are dominated by just a couple of massive players? Let's figure it out.
I mean, seriously, think about it for a second. When you buy something like wheat, you don't care who grew it, it's all the same. But when you buy a smartphone, the brand is everything. That huge difference in how they compete ends up shaping the prices we pay, the choices we have, and even the new technologies we get. So what's going on here?
Well, the big secret, the answer to that puzzle, all comes down to two words: market structure. Think of it as the DNA of an industry. It's the hidden rule book that decides how companies are going to behave, how they'll compete, and ultimately, how much power each one gets to have.
So here's how we're going to break this all down. First, we'll nail down exactly what market structure is. Then, we'll look at the two polar opposite ends of the spectrum before diving into the messier, more common markets we see every day. After that, we'll talk about why any of this matters to you, and we'll wrap it all up with a big picture view of the whole thing.
Okay, let's jump right into part one. What exactly is market structure? The easiest way to think about it is this. It's basically the rules of the game for any industry you can think of.
Now, if you want the textbook definition, it's the set of characteristics that defines how an industry is put together. And these characteristics really boil down to four key questions. Let's tackle the first one. First up, how many players are on the field? Are we talking about a huge ocean of tiny businesses, a small exclusive club of giants, or maybe just one single company calling all the shots? This number is our starting point, and it's a big one. Second, how high is the velvet rope? In other words, how hard is it for a new company to even get into the game? We call these barriers to entry, and they can be anything from insane startup costs. I mean, just imagine trying to start a new airline, to powerful legal shields like patents on a new medicine.
Third question, what's actually being sold? Is it all basically identical? Wheat is wheat, right? That's what we call a homogeneous product. Or are the products all a little bit different? Think about restaurants or cars. They're differentiated. They compete on brand, on quality, on features, not just on having the lowest price.
And finally, number 4. All of this, it boils down to one crucial concept: market power. How much control does a single company really have over the price? On one hand, you've got price takers, like a farmer who just has to accept whatever the going rate is for their crops. And on the other, you have price makers, like a tech company that basically tells us what the price of their new phone is going to be. These four ingredients, all mixed together, create the recipe for how any market works.
Okay, so now that we've got the building blocks, let's move on and look at the two extreme ends of the spectrum. We're talking pure, all-out competition versus absolute, total power.
So in one corner, we have perfect competition. And in the other corner, it's total opposite, the monopoly. Now, you don't really see these in their purest form out in the wild, but they're incredibly important benchmarks for understanding everything that happens in between.
Let's start with perfect competition. Picture this: thousands and thousands of small firms. It's super easy for anyone to get started, and everybody's selling the exact same stuff. The stock market or a giant farmer's market are pretty close examples. In this world, no single seller has any power at all. They are all pure price takers.
Now, let's flip that completely on its head. A monopoly. Here you have one seller, period. The barriers to entry are like a giant fortress wall, nobody else is getting in, and the product is totally unique with nothing else quite like it. Think of your local water utility. This single firm isn't taking a price, it's making the price. Okay, so those are the theoretical extremes. But let's be real, most of the world operates in shades of gray. So for part 3, we're diving into what I call the messy middle. This is where pretty much every business you and I interact with actually lives. First up is something called monopolistic competition. And yeah, I know, it sounds like a complete contradiction, but it's actually a brilliant way to describe a lot of markets. You have lots of firms, and it's easy to enter, just like perfect competition. But here's the twist. The products are all a little different. Your favorite coffee shop, your barber, the garage you trust. This little bit of uniqueness gives each business its own tiny mini monopoly.
And then we have the oligopoly. Welcome to the land of the giants. This is where just a handful of huge companies run the whole show. The barriers to entry are high, and the most important word here is interdependence. Every single move one company makes, a price change, a new product launch, directly impacts all the others. It's like a high-stakes chess match between a few grandmasters. Think Apple versus Samsung or Coke versus Pepsi.
What makes these oligopolies so fascinating is this constant tension between cooperating and competing.
This table, a classic prisoner's dilemma, shows it perfectly. So look, if firm A and firm B both agree to keep their prices high, they both make a nice $4 million. That's the top left. But firm A might get greedy. It thinks, hey, if I secretly lower my price, I can steal all their customers. And boom, as you see in the bottom left, firm A makes $6 million. Of course, firm B is thinking the exact same thing. So what often happens? They both get nervous, they both cut prices, and they end up in the bottom right corner, stuck in a price war and only making $2 million each. This constant strategic dance is what defines an oligopoly.
Okay, so we've defined all these structures. But why should you care? What's the so what factor? Well, for part 4, let's connect all this directly to your wallet and the choices you have as a consumer.
This table sums it all up. Look at perfect competition. It gives you the absolute lowest price, and it's the most efficient. The downside? You get zero choice. Now, swing all the way to the other end. A monopoly is going to charge you the highest price for the lowest amount of choice, and it's the least efficient. And in that messy middle, monopolistic competition gives you the most choice. Think of all the different restaurants in your city. While oligopolies tend to have high prices, but you still get some choice because the big players are always trying to one-up each other.
And that word, inefficient, isn't just some abstract term. When markets have too much concentrated power, it leads to what economists call welfare loss. What that really means is that, as a society, we end up getting less stuff for more money than is ideal. Resources get wasted, and all of us are a little bit worse off because of it. All right, for our final section, let's zoom out. Let's put all these pieces together on one simple spectrum so we can really see the big picture.
And there it is, the competition spectrum. On the far left, you have the most intense competition and zero market power with perfect competition. As you move to the right, firms start to gain a little power by being different in monopolistic competition. Keep going, and you get to oligopoly, where a few giants have a ton of power, until you land on the far right with a monopoly, which has the most market power possible.
You know, Adam Smith famously said, our economy runs on self-interest. But market structure is what sets the rules for how that self-interest plays out. In a highly competitive market, the only way for a business to succeed is to lower its prices and improve its product. But in a monopoly, that very same self-interest can lead to higher prices and less innovation. The rules of the game really do matter.
And that leaves us with a really fascinating final question to chew on. We all love the low prices that come from fierce competition, but it's often the massive profits from those less competitive markets, the oligopolies and monopolies, that fund the risky long-term research that leads to the next big breakthrough. So what's the ideal balance? How do we get low prices today without sacrificing the amazing innovations of tomorrow? That's the billion-dollar question.